Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And glad to have with us on our live line this morning, Hornell Mayor John Buckley. Mayor Buckley, thanks for calling in.
Well, good morning on another snowy day here in the Maple City.
Yeah, I'm glad you did not drive in today. It was pretty slippery last night. And not as bad this morning, but all the same.
Well, the hill can be treacherous at times, so it's a good thing for phones.
Well, you were in Albany last week for a New York State Conference of Mayors, a NICOM meeting. Can you tell us about that?
You know, NICOM had a special meeting last week, so I traveled up Tuesday afternoon and attended an all-day conference on Wednesday. And the meeting, the conference was about one issue, and that was the governor's proposal to legalize recreational use of marijuana. So, obviously, when the state takes on something enormous as marijuana, there's a lot of questions. And, I ended up going to the conference and I learned a lot, but I ended up leaving with more questions and concerns than when I got there. This act, if it were to go into law, it would basically create a new chapter in New York State law entitled the Cannabis Law, because that's how the state refers to it. And it would also establish an Office of Cannabis Management, so creating more bureaucracy, if you would. How do you implement something like this? Well, you base it on what other states do, and I think you look at other states and how they've done it. Some states have done it more effectively than others. So I think I would encourage New York State to, if this is indeed the road that they're going down, I would encourage them to kind of pump the brakes and take a look to see what other states have done. From my standpoint, I think overall it's a bad idea. I think New York State has this habit of looking at these opportunities to really put more money in the coffers, and I think marijuana is one of those things where the state looks at it as a cash cow. And I think that's kind of like the wrong approach. If you remember years back, there was this big push to increase the number of casinos in New York State, and the governor at the time and a few others, they thought this was going to be a big economic driver, an economic engine. There'd be this influx of money, influx of jobs, influx of tax revenue. But really, what it is, you might get a small bump in the state coffers doing something like that, but you're really, in my opinion, Brian, you're really encouraging bad behavior, gambling. It's very destructive to the individual. It's very addictive. It tears families apart. It can ruin people financially. And marijuana, honestly, I don't know why the state would be encouraging something like this. I've held town halls strictly on the drug use topic. I've had individuals come in that have been hooked on opioids, and I had a young lady in 2 years ago in one of my town halls, and she started with marijuana, and marijuana was the gateway drug, and that turned into another thing, and eventually she was hooked on heroin. And I just think it's the wrong approach for the state to do it. But if they are going to do it, I would hope that they would take their time and do it the right way.
Was there any, did anybody bring up the topic of the possibility of the dangers of secondhand smoke from marijuana at this meeting you were at?
Well, there were some folks from various codes departments up there, and that's been a concern of mine, and it's been a topic here at City Hall, because, it's one of those things where if all of a sudden it's legalized and you're able to do it within your own home or your own dwelling, if you live in a house next door, and in the city of Hornell, there's a lot of houses that are built right on top of the other. There's not a lot of space between some of the homes here. You go down like Armory Place or Fulton Street, or a lot of city streets. There's houses that are just literally just a few feet away from one another. So there is the potential and the concern that if it's legalized and you have an individual smoking marijuana in their own home, especially during the warm months, and they have the windows open, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there, just enjoying the comforts of your own home, and that is starting to come into your windows, or heaven forbid, you have children, or you have the baby in the nursery, and the marijuana smell is coming in, or there's a lot of I think kind of unforeseen circumstances, unintended consequences, if you will, but we have to ask those questions. We have to have safeguards in place. How does that affect people? There's a state law now as far as bonfires go, and in your backyard, people are allowed to have those as long as they adhere to state guidelines. But if there's a smoke problem, the resident can call the fire department, and the fire department can go ask the people to extinguish that fire if it's creating a smoke nuisance for the neighborhood. And I would think we would have to have similar things in place for marijuana, because if you have children, whether it's legal or not, if you have children, especially infants, you don't want that coming into your house and having that be a nuisance to you or your family, because we have to protect the quality of life of residents.
Talking with Hornell Mayor John Buckley this morning. Mayor Buckley, there was a article in the Tribune last week, headline, Landlords to be fined for tenant crimes, properties to be inspected following arrest. It was a Jason Jordan article, talked about how Hornell City Hall's working to make it harder for drug criminals to live and deal in the neighborhoods. What can you tell us about this?
Well, I think the headline was a little sensationalistic. I think just having that headline is going to obviously attract attention, and that's all well and good. And it's not a law; it's in addition to the code. And what it really does, Brian, and I'll read right off the resolution. It says, "Said arrests shall result in a mandatory inspection of said property by the Codes Office of the City of Hornell to ensure that dangerous conditions do not exist within said dwelling." And that's really the crux of it. Back years ago in the 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s, when we talked about drug arrests in houses or in dwellings, that really was about back in those days. It was people smoking pot, passing the joint around, maybe some other things, but the ball game has changed. Drugs 20, 30, 40 years ago and drugs today are vastly different. And what we've been seeing over the past several years is an uptick in manufacturing and trafficking of heavy narcotics in homes and structures and rentals throughout the city. And so we need to have safeguards in place to ensure safety within those structures. For instance, we've had several meth labs within the city of Hornell. We had one on Olive Place just a couple of years ago, where it resulted in a fire. So what has been going on and what we've been seeing now is really hazardous materials, potential for explosions and fires. 20, 30 years ago, when you mentioned drug bust or drug arrest within a house, the words fire, explosion, toxic chemicals, exposure, those didn't enter into the equation. It's a different ball game, and as I said, just a few minutes ago, the houses in the city are built right on top of each other in a lot of instances. And if someone's cooking meth in the house next door, has no idea what's going on, and there's an explosion, or if you're living in the upstairs apartment or on the other side of a duplex, there needs to be safeguards. So what this code change really does is it gets our codes department in these structures after those arrests have been completed, and it gets them in there to ensure that the structures themselves are safe. I've seen it with my own eyes. Our police, fire, and codes officials see it a lot more than I do. But those dangers do exist. When there's those arrests, whether it's meth or other hard narcotics. A lot of times there's drug paraphernalia left over, and there's children involved. I've been in these places before where I've seen just mattresses thrown on the floor. The kids basically sleep on a mattress over in the corner. There's syringes sitting around. I mean, it's terrible. We have to protect these children. We have to protect the residents, because a lot of the time, I mean, let's be honest. Most of the time, people don't know what's going on in these houses until it's too late, and then there's a drug arrest or a fire or an explosion, and that's happened. And we just want to make sure that we're doing everything possible to mitigate that. Obviously, the landlords are going to be, that's going to get their attention. And just let me say this: there are many, many good landlords in the city of Hornell, but there are some who just aren't as proactive as others. So there's a lot of landlords that are proactive. Nowhere in the code does it say or does it require them to, inspect their premises or their properties. I would encourage them to do so as much as they can. Obviously, the tenants do have rights, and you have to be cognizant of those rights. But I would argue that if you're a landlord and you're a proactive landlord, and many of which are in the city of Hornell, but if you're one of those proactive landlords, then I think your tenants are going to recognize that, and they're going to say, hey, you know what, maybe this isn't the place for me. And I think the overriding message is, we're trying to send a strong message to drug dealers, drug traffickers, drug manufacturers that Hornell is not the place to be.
Sure thing. Talking to Hornell Mayor John Buckley this morning live on Newsmaker. There's another part of the article that says Buckley encouraged landlords to walk through their properties at least once a month to inspect smoke detectors and plumbing, as well as monitor for possible drug activity. Can you expand on that a little bit, John?
Well, that's what I was just talking about, being proactive. Obviously, and I'll reiterate, tenants do have rights, and you have to recognize those rights and respect those rights. But if you own a property, I think it behooves you to want to kind of keep an eye on that property, make sure it's being properly maintained and upkept. And I would try to have those walkthroughs, whether it's monthly or bi-monthly, just to do those inspections. I've seen, and some landlords already do that, Brian, and I appreciate that, and I encourage that. But I've seen, I deal with codes on a daily basis, and I've seen photos, and I've gone to some of the properties myself where the landlord basically just collects the check at the end of the month, and then something happens 6 months or a year down the road, the tenant gets evicted, and then the landlord's left scratching his head and has to tear down walls and repaint and do this and that, replace fixtures. So I think it's in their best interest, even from a financial standpoint. And I know, one of the big things some of the landlords were getting hung up on was the fine that's involved. And really what that is just to offset the cost of the code's inspection itself. It's not fining one person for another's crime. It's just that bill has to go somewhere for that codes inspection to take place and the work that the codes department has to perform. So that's really the impetus behind that. I will say, and I'll break a little news here for you, Brian. In 2 weeks, I'm having a meeting with landlords throughout the city, and we're going to sit down and we're going to put our heads together along with some of my folks from the police department, fire department, and the codes department, and we're going to sit down and we're going to have a summit, and we're going to discuss these issues, and we're going to try to tackle some of these issues and find a path forward to strengthen our neighborhoods. I've had discussions with several landlords just this past week, and obviously some of them were pretty alarmed over the fine aspect of it. But when I've had those conversations and I've explained the impetus behind it, and the impetus is the safety of the structure and the safety of the residents and the safety of the neighborhood, to a person, they're all on board with that. So now that we've all got each other's attention, we're going to have that meeting, and I think something very productive is going to come out of it.
Very interesting information we're getting this morning from Hornell Mayor John Buckley. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back right after this, and then we check the forecast. Stay with us.
Hello, this is Brian O'Donovan, President and CEO at St. James Hospital. I would like to provide some exciting updates that are happening here.
We've expanded X-ray and blood draw services at the new medical office building, 7309 Seneca Road North. X-ray is open Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. and weekends at 10 a.m. Blood draw is open Monday through Saturday at 7 a.m. Just walk in. I welcome your feedback. Please feel free to contact me at 607-324-8113. Thanks.
Checking in now with meteorologist Rob Carroll, and he says it's going to be pretty cold this week.
Yes, it is, Brian. Temperatures are going to be well below normal for this part of the year. We've got Arctic high pressure stretching from Montana to Kansas all the way into Texas, and that system is building east. Low pressure moving off the coast of New England this morning. It's going to help draw some of that colder weather down across the southern tier, so don't put the winter jacket away just yet. You'll need it. A lot of cloudiness in the forecast for today. There'll be some widely scattered flurries and snow showers. Highs today only 20 to 25. Sunrise this morning was at 6:39. It'll set tonight at 6:04. We'll have clouds tonight, a few flurries, maybe a snow shower. Rather chilly overnight, 5 to 10 above. Tomorrow, more clouds, chance for some afternoon snow showers, even colder than today, with highs of only 15 to 20. Tomorrow night, scattered snow showers, lows near 5 above. Turning partly sunny Wednesday, chance of snow showers, cold 15. Keep in mind, we're supposed to be close to 40 degrees in the afternoon, so Wednesday.
Thank you, Rob. We're now back with Hornell Mayor John Buckley. Mayor Buckley, the big story out of last week was that State Senator Kathy Young is stepping down, and in only 2 weeks, it's not just that she's not seeking re-election. She's going quickly, taking a job in agriculture at Cornell University. Dr. Robert Heineman was on Friday, and he didn't mince any words. He pointed the finger at State Senate Republican leader John Flanagan over this one, saying that Flanagan stripped her of some key duties, took away a lot of power, including not just the Senate Finance Committee chairmanship, but also the Senate re-election campaign committee work that Senator Young always did successfully. And when she was removed from the duty, Heineman pointed out that the Republicans lost the Senate. Hornell Mayor John Buckley, your thoughts on Senator Young's career coming to a quick close here?
Well, first and foremost, my congratulations to the senator on a wonderful, long career in New York State Senate, and I thank her for her service. She's always been a steadfast advocate and supporter on a fiscal level and on a social level. And I know she's done well for her constituents in her district. It is a surprise, and I suppose when you do the postmortem of last year's election as it pertains to the New York State Senate, you can kind of put the finger in two different places. Number one, Ed Cox, the New York State Republican chair. I think he shoulders much of the blame for what happened there, but also on Senator Flanagan. I've met Flanagan a few times. I can honestly say I've never really been impressed with his leadership or lack thereof. And he did strip Senator Young of some of her duties and some of her positions. So, the Senate is sliding backwards, in my opinion. Now that the Republicans have lost the majority in the Senate, we've really lost that firewall, and now you're seeing the Democrats pretty much just ram through whatever liberal legislation they want to, and there's nothing the Republicans in the Senate nor the Assembly can do to stop it. So, yes, I do think Flanagan shoulders a lot of blame. I think Dr. Heineman is spot on with his analysis, as he typically is, and it's really a shame. I wish Senator Young all the best in her new role, and I know she'll be great at whatever she does. But it's a shame losing her, and especially this late because petition season's already started.
How about Congressman Tom Reed? Now, Reed is a member of the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. He's one of the leaders of the Problem Solvers Caucus. He and a Democrat congressman from New Jersey. It's kind of interesting to see the changes in the Congressman Tom Reed approach to things now that they're not in that the Republicans don't run the House, but all the same, it's kind of interesting to watch. He maintains loyalty to Trump, but works with the Democrats wherever he can. Well,
I think to the congressman's credit, he's been doing that. he's loyal to the president, when he agrees with the president. But he is a part of the Problem Solvers Caucus, which I applaud him, to continue working with the Problem Solvers Caucus. And honestly, Brian, if we're going to move forward and come together, we need some sort of unity. And the Problem Solvers Caucus is a wonderful opportunity to do that. The problem with the Problem Solvers Caucus is there just isn't enough of them. There's not enough of them to really make a dent in policy yet. And it's increasingly difficult because on both sides you have people that are far to the left and you have people that are far to the right, and that whole middle has been squeezed over the last 10 to 15 years. And moderates, especially moderates in the Democratic Party, are almost non-existent. There's a handful out there in the Congress, but not the way it was. The Democratic Party under Bill Clinton has basically ceased to exist. I think most of them would probably be more in line with Republican ideals at this point. So, but I do applaud Congressman Reed. He's always tried to work across the aisle and find common ground, and that's what we need to do. That's what we need to do on a federal level, a state level, or any level of government.
Final question for you, Hornell Mayor John Buckley. The Republicans in Albany seem to indicate that there's some truth to this. Maybe not as much as the Democrats in Albany say. The SALT issue, state and local taxes. Was this something that problems with taxes in New York State? Is that all Trump's fault?
No, that's not all true. That's the game that they play. They always, everyone tries to point the finger in the other direction. A lot of that is just because of the high taxes in New York State. If New York State didn't have the highest taxes in the nation, a lot of you wouldn't need a lot of the exemptions that exist or existed. As far as SALT goes, there's still a $10,000 limit as far as the deductions go. It doesn't affect a lot of people in Hornell. Maybe a few here and there, but I think that's more of a product of the state being such a high tax state. A lot of the lower tax states, you don't even have to worry about something like that. It's a non-issue. So that's just one of the symptoms. So I know time's running short, Brian, but I do want to get a plug in for St. Patty's Day that's coming up.
Sure.
So St. Patrick's Day is coming up pretty soon. So just do me a favor, Brian. The next time you talk to the weatherman, have him put in a good word with Mother Nature to try to get some warm weather this way and melt some of that snow so we can have a warm, mild parade this year.
Mayor John Buckley, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, Brian. Always good to talk to you.